Looks like we're live. I'm going to ramble for a couple minutes just so I can make sure you're hearing me. So when you hear my voice, tell me you hear me. And then we'll get started with painting. I want to launch right into it because I was working on an email for my Friday newsletter, and I told everyone who's getting that email on Friday that they were going to get a 5-minute painting exercise that you can do even when you have only a tiny bit of time, and then we'll actually spend a little bit longer. Thank you, Monica. Yeah, so you'll be able to spend a little bit longer painting. I did promise you a 30-minute painting exercise. We're going to do both. So I'm glad to see you hear me. Glad you're here. I'm scheduling this when I would ordinarily be cooking supper so that hopefully we have more of you able to tune in, home from work, settling in for the evening perhaps. I know in Australia, Julie, I saw your name there. It's probably pretty early in the morning. So thank you. Hi, Louise. You're in Australia as well. Thanks for being here. Whew, we're going to paint today. I wanted to wrap up World Watercolor Month with some fun painting. And I emphasize fun because isn't that why we all started? We started painting because something in us just really wanted to paint, really enjoyed painting. And sometimes we lose sight of that. And it tends to be, I feel like for me anyhow, it tends to be a fight to get back to that. And so one of the reasons I teach the way I teach, the only reason I teach the way I teach, is because this is me teaching myself and doing it publicly so you get to listen in. So we're just shift over, change to the work surface here and see if that lines up nice and clear for you. And then we're just going to launch into doing some painting. I'm going to quickly shift I'm running everything for this myself. I'm moderator, painter, videographer. I do all the things. And I texted my daughter to tell her not to mow the lawn too close to the house. So hopefully she got that message. I have minions to do my lawn mowing. But today I'm going to just try to focus on painting. And I mentioned on Friday when my email goes out, I'm going to be promising my painters there a 5-minute something you can do to help you rediscover maybe the love of painting and that childlike fun. And so let me show you what I have. I have a tray, first of all. This is just an enamel tray that I bought a long time ago when I was thinking that maybe I'd be squeezing more fresh paint into my tray rather than using my palette. And it hasn't really worked out that way. I tend to let this sit aside in the paint and it gets very, very hard. So I'm still kind of a studio palette person, and maybe if I cleaned this more often, I would use it more. So I've got just some really old paint kind of piled up around the edges. I squeezed a bit of paint into the center, and I just grabbed something that was nearby, and that was a tube of egg tempera. Did you know you could still buy this stuff? Sennelier makes tubes of egg tempera. I found this when I was traveling. Trying to remember where. Seems to me this was in Santa Fe. And so I thought I would maybe try working with that today. Working with what's in my palette here as well. And if I didn't have the egg tempera, I probably would have just grabbed a tube of watercolor paint from nearby. The other thing I have, and this is going to cost you a lot of money, or at the very least a lot of time. I'm just kidding. Go out into your backyard. If you have a tree you can strip a branch off of. I'm kind of riffing off an Instagram reel my husband sent me, and he thought I should do this thing where this guy soaks his branch in paint and slaps it on the paper. And I thought, well, first of all, my husband doesn't know how many people have already sent me that reel, which is very sweet of him to think of me. And second of all, I think it actually works really better if you saturate your paint with your branch with ink, because watercolor, so diluted, if we're trying to apply it to something like this, might not work so well. But I thought, you know what, we'll bring the natural world in. We'll see what we can do with that. So that's kind of where I'm starting. And you can already see that my little branch. And if you don't have a branch, another way I've done this is with a piece of string. I have a roll of cotton string. You could also, I don't know, cook up some spaghetti. Okay, that would be amazing. I'm going to try that next. Okay, I've already broken one bit of the branch, so we're already kind of into the mess. And so we're making a mess. And I want to talk about this because in 5 minutes of painting, there is not a lot you can do beyond show up, make a little bit of a mess, and then kind of trust that somehow it's going to trigger some freedom. So that's the whole goal. What are we going to accomplish in 5 minutes? Not a masterpiece. So we set aside that expectation and we show up just to maybe de-stress a little bit, maybe just do a big exhale onto the paper, all of the pent up, stuff you're holding in. And so that's kind of what I'm thinking about as I'm scrubbing this into my messy blue paint and the little bits of other colors that are in this palette. I'm going to also mist just to re-moisten some of that paint now that it's applied to the leaves. Let it get a little bit of flow. And I was really tempted, just for the internet's sake, to actually get a raincoat and put it on, or a poncho of some kind, because I might need it. We're going to slap some paint onto the paper. And obviously, I said we were going to do some painting today. You haven't come with branches and enamel trays and giant pieces of paper, but I would encourage you, if you're taking my lead and thinking about how you might apply this to your own practice in a 5-minute exercise, use a big piece of paper, the biggest you can get away with. Maybe you've got the backside of a failed painting, but using a big piece of paper like this is a way of signaling to yourself that you have the freedom as an artist to do whatever you want. Using a branch to slap paint on your paper, and maybe one more time, is a way of signaling to yourself that you have the freedom to do whatever you want. And when I give myself that signal, really amazing things start to happen. Okay, look at this. There's a bug. We're just gonna kind of move him off. There we go. He can live in this little, I'm gonna just put him in this cup and then we'll set him free later. And okay, so we have this amazing randomness, and yet there's a connection there. It moves across the page, and Monica's gasping over in Edmonton, and I am too. I'm excited about this because it feels very freeing. There's little hints of this yellow that's in the palette, and it's really pretty. We're gonna put a little bit more in, and so this is part 2. Next step is not picking up the paintbrush to immediately fix this, because that's something we're tempted to do, but just, do something rebellious, breaking the rules. I was told to be very, very careful as a new painter with how I handled my watercolor paper, because my oils from my skin could get on the paper and cause it to not be archival anymore. They never said anything about, the fact that we're breathing on the paper, that we're I don't know, the whole blood, sweat, and tears of painting. And yet somehow, we were given this kind of messaging that using our hands is kind of taboo. And so to bring it in now at this stage, there's something very freeing about that. And this is the playful thing. And yeah, I agree, Tanis. I could call it done. And there's something really exciting about being in a place in your painting where there's another bug. I guess I should have shook my branch off before I brought it. There we go. He's a little bigger. Before I brought it in the house. Okay, so but I think there's something really amazing about the fact that watercolor, or in this case, watercolor and egg tempera, and natural found objects like bug-filled tree branches can be absolutely so beautiful, and can make beautiful art for us without us having to do anything. And it's another signifier, because as artists, we want to be really great. And most of the time, our greatness comes from us being able to step back and be with the painting, if that makes sense. And if you're a watercolorist, especially, because watercolor does rely so much on fluidity, kind of randomness. I don't know if randomness is the right word, but the physics of watercolor flow is a big part of it. And we miss that when we're busy trying to control it. And I was going through my painting box of old paintings, and I found a bunch of things pre-2005. So I was very actively painting and learning technique in 2005. It was a good time for me. But it was also a time of deep control, really wanting to be orchestrate everything that happened, using very little water, working very slowly and very delicately. I would never have done anything truly risky on my painting. I was very anxious about it. See, my color's getting muddy over here, and I was kind of looking for some of that pure goldenness to bring into the painting. And I just invite some flow here. Now, we commented just a minute ago that we could call this done with that one big stroke. And it was my big exhale onto the paper. But I love the fact that I get to keep breathing if I wish to, right onto this piece of paper. And we're just going to tilt a little bit. And just get some of that fluidity off the page. But to be able to keep going is really fun and exciting, because it also, I think to me, it's another signifier. It signals to me that I'm allowed to keep going. I'm allowed to even ruin the painting if it comes to that. This is probably not the same yellow color that was in my other palette, but since I'm out of that pure yellow on the enamel palette, we're gonna just keep going with this. And I just thought I would maybe bring a little bit more yellow into this and bring the brush in and be reminded of the fact that I am a painter and I get to do whatever I want. And it's interesting because I was thinking about my process as a young artist, and as a young kid, actually, a young girl who maybe wanted to be an artist and certainly found a lot of joy in art. And I was doing two kinds of art back then, just examining. I like this. I think there's a feeling of flight. There's a lot of mark-making energy. I might just stop this right here. It feels really freeing. But I was thinking about the fact that when I was a young person, I made art for myself and I would never show it to anyone. And this was my world-building art. I would draw girls who had better clothes than me, mostly, and imagine lives for them. And that was kind of my fantasy world. And I was embarrassed about that. I would never have told anybody that. You are the first people I've actually talked to about it in about 25 years. But I had notebooks full of these girls with names and curly hair, because I didn't have curly hair back then. And, these lives that I didn't have. And I got to make them up and make this little world. And that was private, and I didn't share with anyone. It was just for me. And then the art I made for other people to show other people was the art that I tried to get there, to look like I was a good artist. And, which one was more fulfilling? Which did I enjoy doing more? Which was more intrinsically motivating? And, yeah, maybe there is an insect here. We were taking insects off the page, so it kind of makes sense. But I think about that now, and I think the art that makes me feel vulnerable, the art that feels very personal, that's the real stuff. That's the stuff that comes from my heart. It's stuff I want to share. And it's stuff I want to share, but I share very nervously because, it is so personal. And there was a time when I wouldn't have dreamed of sharing anything that personal. But if I can paint from that motivation, that getting back to that feeling of painting for myself. And I'm not really that... I have lots of clothes now, so I don't need to paint or draw girls with better clothes than me. But I certainly do get to create a world, and that's what I'm doing here, a world in which I get to paint whatever I want, and I can put in as much or as little effort as I want. And the paintings where I work less are usually the paintings that have more freedom and beauty and just an effervescent joy. So that's what I'm feeling from this. and notice that it took so little effort from me. And I did a lot of talking, but ordinarily if I was painting this by myself in my studio, it's just about looking. You know, I'm really spending more time. I might have music playing in the background, but I make pretty much, I make very few brush strokes. I try to do less and notice more. And so I'm just kind of opening this shape up right now and letting some of that beautiful quinacridone gold move across the page. And now we have a composition that's this beautiful diagonal, which is something I often do. I have it bracketed with this radiance of sunlight and this burst of energy. You know, maybe if we're getting really imaginative, I could, and yeah, there's no plastic over the paper. I have a plastic work surface that I'm working on. But, you know, if I was being really imaginative about interpreting this, I almost think that if you could see invisible airwaves after, you know, maybe a bird has racketed out of the underbrush when you're hiking with your dog, happens fairly often around here, you know, maybe this would be the marks in the world that it leaves behind in the air. And I like that. I like imagining something unseen. And wouldn't that be a wonderful title for an art show? So, you know, we get to impose a little bit of beauty and meaning onto what we're creating, even when it's created out of that very, very kind of foolish place. As I was prepping for today, you know, pulling that branch out, saturating it with paint, I couldn't help but think, you know, this is dumb. What are you thinking? You haven't even tried this, you know, on your own. What is it going to look like to just do this on a live video? And yet, look how special and magical that is. And I think there is, maybe we try to control the magic. You know, if I had planned every step out and done a bunch of prep, maybe this one wouldn't feel as fresh to us. So that's just something to think about. And yeah, there is nothing like feeling the freedom from a splash of paint. So, and then when you create as a child with that exuberance of the dirty hands, and I think a really good example is I had a friend come with her children and they did some acrylic pouring with me. So they were pouring different colors of paint onto a panel or a canvas, and they made these beautiful patterns. And then the kids were, I think, 5 and 7 years old. And after a bit of pouring, they kind of moved into this other phase where they started to touch the paint. And then they started to rub the painting. And the wash of those blends of, or those separate beautiful colors that were flowing together but yet still separate, everything turned gray, like the edges of my palette, you know, like palette dirt. But they were having so much fun just smearing the paint around. It was like they didn't care that they were losing that beautiful design because it was all about the process. And I think when we come to our paintings with that kind of mindset, somehow I think it rewards us. And I think that's really, really special. So that's a 5-minute-ish painting exercise with a lot of narrative. But yeah. Thank you, Monica. Now you have to go try it. But while we're here, I just want to talk about this idea of, you know, what do we have time for? And one thing I did all through World Watercolor Month was each of the demos that I presented to you was, each of the paintings that I did was 30 minutes or less. And actually, let's just pull my sketchbooks out here. And so if you want to develop a 30-minute or less painting habit, and I think this is valuable for us because we are in such a time-poor era, you know. I feel like since, especially in the last year or two, since COVID, we all kind of feel like we're trying to catch up a little bit, having had life kind of on hold for a time, or maybe some of our plans delayed. I do feel like things almost universally feel like they're ramping up, and there's just this urgency. And so I like thinking about the fact that in my sketchbooks, I can create a watercolor practice that suits my lifestyle, that fits in with my lifestyle. Now this is my sketchbook that I bring with me when I travel. So it's full of paintings from my recent trip to Greece. But all of these were done in definitely less than an hour, most of them less than 30 minutes, because we were on location and often many people were walking past. And so, you know, you have an urgency there with plein air painting that teaches you to maybe capture what you're seeing in a distilled way. And I agree, less is often more, but it's always in trying to figure out what the less should be. And I feel like, I think, yeah, between this one and this one, I started to feel like I was really starting to figure it out towards the end of our time, our 12 days in Greece. I can't believe I get to do this again next year. But this particular one was not painted looking at these items. This is one of those blue church domes that they have in Santorini. And I did not paint this looking at a dome. I had actually sat down in a cafe and the view at the cafe wasn't that amazing. And so I started drawing on my memory to pull together the afternoon we'd spent on the water, the path that we'd taken from our hotel to the downtown area, which was all down all these corridors and kind of a labyrinth, and the blue domes of the churches. This again was just an echo of some of the shapes I was seeing. This actually is a reference to the striped poles that are often outside these churches. I don't know why they're striped, but it just all came together and it was like a journal entry. And I could do that and just savor that moment. And it was a way of, I think, because when we travel, and almost anything we do, how often do we grab a moment and stop and pause and remember and think about what we've seen or what we're seeing and take the time? And so, you know, truthfully, to take 30 minutes and work in a sketchbook is often to kind of hold time for those few minutes. And I think there's something really, really special about that. This particular sketchbook, if you're wondering about it, because it's absolutely beautiful, this is the Etcher limited edition perfect sketchbook, and they make this every year. They release a new one, and the perfect sketchbook signature series has a leather cover, and this is Fabriano paper, I believe, in here. So it is just the best watercolor paper that you can find in a sketchbook, pretty much. So I have a handful of these that I've filled, and I love seeing them as a journal. And sketchbooks force me to work kind of in a hurry. You've seen this one. They force me to work rapidly, for one thing. Most of everything you're going to see in my sketchbooks has been painted in less than an hour. This was a 30-minute demo from a couple of weeks ago on my YouTube channel. You can see the tutorial on how to paint this. But sketchbook work also often limits you to letting go of expectations, or pushes you to let go of expectations, because when I paint something in this sketchbook, I know it's not, oh, thank you, Lori Louise, it is vegan leather, so faux leather now. They don't, they're not using actual cowhide or anything. That's a good thing to note. But they are a beautiful sketchbook, and I try not to be paralyzed by their beauty. Most of the time when I'm painting in a sketchbook like this, I don't start on page 1. I'll start on, page 2 or 3. And then once I feel like I'm kind of getting in the zone, I'll go back and do something on page 1. So that's just something to think about. But yes, Kilimanjaro, and that's what this is. This is a Kilimanjaro paint book, which is made by Cheap Joe's. But when you're painting in a sketchbook, most of the time you're probably not going to pull that page out, and it's not going to be something that you're going to be framing. And so it frees you up to be experimental. It frees you up to take some risks, and it takes away that expectation that maybe you have to show it to somebody. All of this gets closed up, put on a shelf, and nobody has to see it. This was a trip to Italy a few years ago. I'm going back to Italy next year too. And that's Italy again. But I wanted to just, I wish I could have showed you this demonstration, this painting, which was just one of the doors from our trip to Greece. I recorded it on video, and that video file went missing. But taking the time to experiment and to say, this is one version, And, if I like what I'm doing, I can move and do something in my paint book. So yeah, that's just something to think about when you're working, when you want to make a healthier painting habit, when you want to take away that pressure to complete those masterpieces. It's a good time to pull out a sketchbook. And my nephew, I think I showed you my sketchbook from a little while ago. It's over here. Actually, I don't think this is it, but we'll take a look and just see. Oh, this is something I made that no one else has seen yet. The other day I was in town, and I had this watercolor block from Saunders Waterford. I like to have a lot of these blocks as well in my sketchbook or in my painting kit, so I can alternate between sketchbooks and the block. And I stopped in town, and in our town of Dawson Creek, we have just right downtown this little white church. And it's one of the very few actually scenic, beautiful buildings in our town. And most things are very kind of utilitarian, in my opinion. But this particular little church is quite cute. It's white. It's got a steeple. And I hadn't realized until a year or two ago that if you're coming down the right street and the sun hits just right, we see the church and we see the art gallery, which is an old grain elevator. And I would never have thought that those two could be fit into a photograph or in the same frame of a painting. But somehow they do. They line up with each other if you're going down that one particular street. Even though to me, I've always felt like they're a long distance apart. And so I got to park by that street the other day and try to capture just a little piece of that. This is a sketchbook idea. It's a painting idea. It's painted on location. It's painted in 30 minutes or less. And I think if I do it again, I'd love to make the church a little bit smaller so that I can get some of the surrounding, vegetation and the street and more of the street signs or something, just a different placement on my page. But I love the fact that I've been working very hard at learning how to paint things in 30 minutes or less. And it's been a real growing experience for me. I don't get to know how it's going to inform my larger paintings, my gallery work. Maybe this is all an overlap. There's so many things that feel like question marks when you start to dive into these new areas. And so even trying to figure out how, the childlike playful paintings speak into, the things when I'm trying to paint things, there's always question marks there. And not knowing how it all fits together, but trusting that maybe when I step back from in time, when time has passed and I can look at my body of work and all the different things I'm working on, maybe I'll get a perspective there where I'll see how it all fits together. And so time gives me a distance and an ability to kind of understand where all of this was going. And so that's really valuable to me. Now I want to talk about, we've got a little bit of time still, and I did promise you I was going to spend a little more time on painting. I want to kind of stay in this open-ended process though. So let's see if we can't carry over some of what was happening on our first piece of paper. And I'm going to talk to you as well about your painting practice. If you have been struggling to make the time to paint, and being time poor is an issue for you, and if you have time and yet somehow you're still procrastinating, I want to talk about that in a few minutes. So hang around, stick around, so we can talk about getting back into that painting practice when you feel like you have no reason for not doing it, except for that you somehow seem to keep procrastinating on it. Because that's a place I have been, and I understand, and yeah, it's not a fun place to be, but it is a place you can get out of. It's a fix, it's a pickle you can get out of. So I'm just going to squeeze a little bit of paint on the paper. And I always do this. I take the lid off a tube over top of my watercolor paper, and the little dried paint from the threads of the tube fall onto the page. So don't be like me. Take your lids off to the side. And we're just going to dab a little bit of paint on the corner. And I'm going to try to thread that lid back on before I forget. And I've got, like, my hands aren't clean. I've got this wet brush. We're going to move some water around from the wet brush. I just want to open things up a little bit and think about now what. And let's continue as we've started. I'm going to use my hands, which are still not particularly clean. So there's a little bit of the yellow from previous on there as well. And that color from Rockwell, by the way, was called Dragonfly, that one. And most of the time my new things that I have, I keep off to the side over here. So a lot of these things are new. I also have the newest new things in this little basket, so that I can be reminded to use them. And let's scribble. So actually, I'm thinking about that little church. It's white, so obviously it's not going to fit into this, but maybe it would. Maybe we can pretend that the church fits in somehow here. And that's suddenly become a roof now, so that kind of works. Let's throw the art gallery in over here. And it's, because I'm using my memory, it's kind of a stack of geometric shapes. It's got a triangular top, having a moment with my words, but and then kind of rectangles below, and I think there's more angles beyond that, but maybe we can let that be a little bit playful. This calls to mind my childhood as well. As kids, we scribble, and then we, with great satisfaction, run to our loved ones and show them what we've created, and have all, and people will ask us, what did you make? And we will say with all confidence exactly what we decide that it is in the moment. And I love to tell the story of my nephew. He's 3, and one of my other nephews, who's in his 20s, was asking him, was telling me that my nephew Cooper likes to paint, and he says, "What do you like to paint, Cooper? Tell Auntie Ange what you like to paint." And Cooper looks at him just a little bit like he thinks he might be just a little bit slow, and he says, "Paper." And it made me laugh because I knew why Cooper didn't understand what my nephew was asking. He didn't understand it because it's not about what you're drawing, the object you're drawing. It's all about the act, the beautiful joy of just putting marks on paper. And so Cooper got that. He just wanted a piece of paper so he can make some beautiful marks. And I think about that because we lose that. We will get a piece of paper. We don't want to ruin it with our foolishness. And what if our foolishness was what made it really special? So right now, this makes me happy. Let's keep going and see if we can't make it make sense. So let's throw some lavender on the page. We're going to throw in a shadow here. And there's siding, so we're going to draw some horizontal lines to create the angles on the siding. And we're not going to worry about perspective too much because David Hockney told me I could do whatever I wanted. He, in an interview, he said that perspective puts a stranglehold on the landscape, and I thought, that actually works for me. So thank you, David Hockney, for that empowering comment. And let's put some sky there. And then what happens is I get to use colors that make me happy. And I get to be extra, I guess. And I think, to me, that's really exciting. And maybe for you too. Because I know a lot of people watching right now, if you're a woman, you might feel like you get more reward for kind of fitting into the space that you're in. And we talk about taking up space, and maybe it's not just women, but if you're a person who always feels like you've been trying not to take up space, doing this kind of painting is, a wonderful permission granter for here is a place where you can take up as much space as you want in the way that you want to. And yeah, I don't know. Does anyone relate to that? Is it just me? These crayons, I should mention what they are. They are called Neocolor crayons. Neocolor 2, because the Neocolor 1 is not water soluble, but Neocolor 2 will dissolve when they get wet, and so we can use them. Let's make a bigger orange mark here, bold orange mark. So the Neocolor 2 I've been really enjoying, and I've just been buying 1 or 2 at a time. And yeah, let's just see here, put a little bit more there. So I really think about the fact that I get to take up space here as an artist. This is my space. And it's also funny because if we're talking about taking up space, that's manganese violet. Excuse me. If we're talking about taking up space, as I work in my studio, this space right here gets smaller and smaller. I collect things. I leave half-finished paintings lying around, and suddenly I realize that I've become I am no longer able to take up space in a literal way, and so I have to fight to get that space back. I have to clean up. Let's put that stop sign in. It was one of my favorite parts of the original, and I'm not looking at that original painting at all right now. I just glanced over at it, so now I've lied. But I haven't been looking at it. I'm really just kind of playing from what I'm remembering right now, and it's been pretty fun. And I can just, it's just interesting to me because I've started saying something I thought I would never say. And it is that watercolor can actually be quite forgiving. Just keep emphasizing that steeple. And we don't think that as new painters. We tend to think that watercolor, you can't fix mistakes in watercolor. That was one of the first things I got told when I was learning to paint. This is a brush pen made by Tombow, I think. And it's full of white acrylic ink. And if I squeeze it, I wonder if this one's almost empty. It's making air-like sounds. So sometimes I squeeze it, sometimes I whack it, and it usually squeezes droplets onto my page. I'm not seeing that, so we're going to take a risk and just open it up. It's got a little valve there, so yeah, it sounds empty. I used it up. That's a big day. I think I have another one somewhere, but we're not going to look for it now. Another way to maybe bring some whites in. Yeah, I'm starting to think that maybe maybe artists don't actually become plein air painters because they want to get outdoors. They just have run out of room in their studios. Our work surfaces are full. We've got to fill up the whole world now. Let's put some letters on the stop sign. And yeah, let's just do that. Just a little bit of white. Let's make a roof line. Let's shingle it because we can. Might as well use my tools, so I'm just dipping this little brush pen into the white gouache, because why not? Kitchen table has been the workspace. Yeah, that's a challenge, isn't it? Because you do eventually want to sit down and eat there. But, for many years, my painting area was also like an all-purpose room in our home. And for years before that, my husband and I, when we first got married, we had a tiny little 2-bedroom house. I painted on the sofa, and while watching, I think it was ER was the thing I remember watching the most, learning how to paint in watercolor, watching, drama TV, and struggling away there on the couch. And whatever space you have, you can learn to paint in the place that you're in, with the time that you have. And that's something I want to, I think every one of us should feel. And yet we can also feel the freedom to know that it's not about looking back and going, well, I've put it off for so long, and I should have been doing this and should have been doing that. Now is always the best time. I've probably over fiddled, and it's really fun. So that's allowed. And I think I talked earlier about, slapping that branch on the page as a permission giver. I'm debating whether or not adding more darks is a good idea, and I'm not feeling it, so we're going to stop there. But I think permission to overwork your painting, permission to not know what you're doing and keep going anyhow. I've played in all of those spaces. I spent a lot of time feeling bad because once again I overworked my painting. And how fun it is to say, I'm going to relentlessly, deliberately overwork something, because I'm going to learn something from that that's going to empower future paintings. Nothing like a pop of light turquoise. This color is called turquoise green, to kind of bring some liveliness in. I'm putting it kind of where I see some warm color, because it's going to contrast against the warm color and kind of, do a little dance. Okay, so yeah, I'm feeling, it's very interesting because I've had an art phase where I was everything was beautiful, beautiful, beautiful. I wanted everything to be graceful. And I'm in this kind of whimsy phase. I think whimsy is a good word for it. Let's put those two side by side just for fun. And I like the placement of the grain elevator in this one. It gets to kind of hold its own. I wouldn't mind putting I had trees and bushes in this one, and I wouldn't mind putting some of those in. I also really like this little yellow sign. Maybe we can still squeeze that in. But I really think at the end of the day, art gets to be the place where I am allowed to show up. And to me, that's really invaluable, because that's not who I am. I'm always a person who's kind of waited to be invited and not wanted to be difficult for anyone. That is not a straight line at all. And so in my art practice, to say, be messy, be the problem child who ruined the painting. Let's echo this blue down here. Those are all things I'm allowed to do and be. And I have the freedom to do that here and not apologize for it. And I really think that at this phase of my life, that's what I've needed. Probably at earlier phases too, I just didn't know it yet. Which color to get is the question. Yeah, the Neo color do come in sets, but I've been buying them 1 or 2 at a time so that I can kind of just explore the different hues that they have. So I like some neutrals. I like the sepia, and I also really love adding in oranges and turquoises. And I have this yellow ochre, golden ochre. So that's kind of what I have right now. And who does make them? Caran d'Ache. That seems like a French name. So yeah, I just kind of look for them when I'm in an art supply store and then buy them one at a time as I see different colors that intrigue me. And often when I travel, I don't bring a bunch of different colors, so then it's a good excuse to buy a few more. I'm just gonna see if I can share my screen here for a second because I want to show you, is it going to let me do it? I want to show you the Back to the Brush course, which I mentioned earlier. It might or might not be working here. I think I can. Oh, see, that was an angry sound. Give it one more try here. Oh, that's why it's doing that. Push the wrong button. Sorry, folks. Give it one more try. I just wanted to talk about Back to the Brush for a moment because I feel like I believe it's my most valuable offering for you. If you're thinking about, if you're watching me paint and wishing you had this kind of freedom, and if you spend more time thinking about how you're not happy with what you're creating and you don't think that you can be an artist who makes art that you can feel deeply satisfied in, this is where I believe it's a valuable place to start. Back to the Brush is a way of encouraging you. I want to make sure you can hear me. Oh, looks like it's working. Back to the Brush is a way of encouraging you right where you are, that you have something valuable to bring to your art, regardless of how skilled you are. And it comes out of mindset stuff, which is a goofy way of saying it. But Back to the Brush offers you, and I'm going to actually see if I can mute this tab here so it doesn't, there we go. So it doesn't start giving you issues. But I built this course around affirmations. And in this, because what I've found is, yep, see, that's me talking. What I've found is that there are core values that I hold that make my art a work, that help me feel good about my art, that help me recognize when I start to go off track, and that motivate me to keep painting. And they're affirmations that remind me that it's not just about my skill or my perfectionism or me being the hardest working person in the room. And those affirmations, you can see them here on the sidebar of the course, of authenticity, of abundance, of agency, which is going to sound obscure until you take the course. Affirmation of acknowledgement, anticipation, and abandon. And then also to think about your own values and see how you can use those to help you create a more expansive painting practice. At the end of the day, we don't get to decide how quickly we're going to learn. All we can do is show up and move the paintbrush. And for me, I think recognizing that I don't get to master skill with the speed that I want. You know, I've been painting 30 years because I just didn't quit. And there's been years that have gone by where I did very little painting. But the healthier my art practice is, the more freedom I have to grow because it pushes me, it gives me permission to try new things, to take new directions, to surprise myself with what I'm capable of. At the end of the day, I don't really have a very good imagination. I tend to be pretty cliche. To get to a place where I can surprise myself with just the beauty and energy that show up on the paper, the things that happen when I get out of my own way and let the painting kind of do what it wants to do, to make that a kind of an environment for me to paint, to make my environment for painting a safe environment for me to show up flawed and show up not having all the answers. All of the things that I think about that go into that are inside of Back to the Brush. And so I released this course last year. I wanted to share it. It hasn't been open for an enrollment in quite a few months since last year. So I wanted to make that available again because I do feel like we are in a phase of life where many of us are far busier than we should be. It's hard to imagine making time to paint when we're discouraged by what we're creating. And so my hope is that Back to the Brush becomes a place where you can invest a little bit of time and then looking at those affirmations, mulling them over during the rest of your day, starting to see, maybe what's blocking you as an artist, what's holding you back from really finding that freedom. And it's stuff that's worked for me. It's amazing how I'll be walking around living my life and all of a sudden it'll pop into my head, oh, I've been going about this particular painting from the wrong direction. If I let go of my need to do such and such, I will have freedom to let the painting be what it should be. And suddenly there's a breakthrough that happens there. And so much of what I do in painting is happening in here before it ever happens down here. So I wanted to share that with you. The course is just newly reopened for enrollment. This is actually my first announcement about it. And just making sure you can see me still. And so because you're hearing about it first, I wanted to also offer you a coupon in honor of World Watercolor Month, just to give you $30 off, which is actually 30% off. And that coupon will work until August 5th. So if you are interested in Back to the Brush, if you've wanted to kind of revive your painting habit, or if you feel like you're going through the motions and trying really hard, but that spirit of your work just isn't coming through, this course could be really helpful to you for that. It includes painting exercises. It's not just about mindset. Each of the affirmations comes with a 15 to 30 minute exercise for you to do to kind of get back to those kind of foundational freedoms of painting and things that have helped me that I incorporate in my painting practice every day. So as you're thinking about that, do take a look at the description below the video, which is where the content, that course link is linked up. And the coupon is embedded into that link. And there's a coupon code there for you to use. So I encourage you to sign up. If you have not already taken the course, or if you are struggling with your motivation, this is a really good place to start. You can do it in your own time. There's no live element where you have to show up online at a certain time. You can pace. We do work through each affirmation at a weekly pace because it is, I do want to encourage you to take the time to think about what each core value means to you and how it shows up in your painting practice. So I just want to encourage you with that. At the heart of everything is whatever you want to paint, whatever you're hoping to achieve, we start because we love to, and getting back to that love, getting back to those core motivations is really foundational for helping to free you up to become your own favorite artist. And it's the core of my work, and I can't stress or emphasize to you enough how delighted I am to see. Who would have thought, 29 and a half years ago when I started painting, I did the math today, who would have thought that I would be celebrating my art in this way, finding this freedom and joy in my work. The fact that I've been able to do this as a business is secondary to me, to the way that I do it, to that message that I get to give myself, the signal that I give myself, which I mentioned earlier, to signify to myself that I get to do whatever I want, however I want, and make all the messes and fail repeatedly if that's where I'm going right now, because I'm doing this for a bigger reason than to get likes on Instagram or to make money, to all the things, to make this a business, to build a reputation. At the heart of all of it, if I don't have the love, it's not worth it. It's, why bother? There's no joy there. And so we start with the joy. We get back to the joy. We build from the joy. And the freedom is there. And the connection gets to be there too. And I think that's the really amazing part. So I want to thank you for watching today. Do take a look at the link in the description below the video. I've linked up that coupon for Back to the Brush. It is not a how to paint course. I want to emphasize that. It's much more about how to think about painting as an artist who wants to prioritize who you are and create a space that's safe for you to show up as an artist, where you don't have to fit yourself into anyone else's mold. It's a freeing and wonderful thing, and I want to encourage you in that. I do have other courses online. If you've taken Back to the Brush and you're just chugging along, I would encourage you to join my Heart-Led Journey course. You can find all of my currently available courses at heartledartist.com. And don't forget to sign up to my mailing list, which I keep you up to date on everything I'm doing, as well as the in-person workshops I'm teaching. I have workshops coming up in Maine, Tucson, Arizona, Costa Rica, Greece, Italy. If you want a painting adventure in somewhere beautiful and exotic, there's absolutely magical things that happen there. Or to come and have a studio experience with me painting in Tucson and Maine. Those are both opportunities to paint in studio with a little bit of plein air thrown in as well. Thanks for watching today. Now, before you leave, the last thing I want you to do, and it's not like and subscribe, although that's wonderful if you want to, but it's stop what you're doing, go find something to slap on your piece of paper, and see what happens when you let a little splashy fun happen. Get your rain poncho if necessary, rewind the video if you can't remember how to start, and just let your heart pound a little bit with the risk of ruining a piece of paper, and slap some paint on there and let your inner child out to play. If you're leaving with clean hands, you are doing it wrong. Thanks for watching, everyone. I'll see you soon. Bye for now.